if you just bought the Sigma 17-50, here is my honest review. So if you haven't watched my first part of this video, when I first bought it and actually used it, after like 6 months plus use of this lens, here are my overall thoughts on it. Number one, I've dropped this and been really rough with this lens. As you can see, there are a couple things here and here, and as you can tell, it's like a cheap plastic, hence the overall budget-friendly lens of this. But would you say it's like the best lens to use? I would say yes and no, because what you're seeing right now is actually the 18-55 kit lens that comes with Nikon, and it's, from my opinion, I would say it has its pros and cons. Would you actually upgrade to this, or would you stay on the kit lens that you're using now? That's like the biggest factor in why I decided to pick up this lens. So my overall pros of it is yes, constant aperture, yes, more sharp, but the overall cons are really starting to bother me depending on the situation of the shoot. For example, if I use this Nikon that I'm specifically using for a full day video shoot, this does get heavy if you're especially hand holding this. So if you're hand holding this lens, I actually don't recommend this lens, and there's other alternatives, but it's definitely a good upgrade lens. Like, don't get me wrong, but as you can tell, it is really heavy. And my other gripe with that is that the focus pull of this has a very short pull. So if you're shooting video on this lens, you're most likely, if you're manually focusing, it is going to be hard to get things always in focus, especially if your subject moves ever so slightly. So you really have to get used to that. Definitely consider it within your kit arsenal. If you're using a D5000, 7000, 3000 series, is this lens right here. But also know that yes, it's gonna get heavy depending if you're gonna be using a tripod or not on it, depending on whether or not you're gonna run and gun with it, or it's gonna be mostly used for on a gimbal. So you have to really decide on your end. You have to consider a couple things. One, what are you shooting? Are you more photos or video? Because for me, I've used this mainly for video. And if you plan on traveling, I definitely don't recommend this lens, because this is quite a hefty lens and bulky as well. So it does get like, do you sacrifice things like compactability versus, you know, image quality or video quality and having a constant aperture. But overall, do I still recommend this lens? Believe it or not, after all my gripes about it, yes, I still do recommend this lens. I would say it's definitely a huge upgrade to have something like a constant aperture and not have to like worry about, oh, you're gonna lose all of your light because it's not a varying aperture like this one. Overall autofocus, there isn't, for if you use a Nikon, the thing is with any 5000, 3000 model, there isn't a built-in autofocus motor within the body, meaning the motor itself is in the camera. And if you're using a D5000, 52, 55, 5600, most Nikons have a horrible autofocus. And I've gotten this question a couple times of, hey, how's the autofocus? I would say it hunts pretty bad and it's pretty loud just across the board when it comes to any Nikon lens when it comes to autofocusing. But I actually think it's actually quieter than the kit lens autofocus, because I've shot this on a whole day on a client, and I did miss the compactability, or like pretty much like a full-on more focus pull versus this very short throw. So those are my honest opinions on the Sigma 70-50 2.8, whether that's for Nikon or Canon. I still recommend this lens within your arsenal. Link is in the description. My name is Peter. You're watching Broke Visionary, where we all start from nothing, but you can always create something.